Petit propaganda, né?
Já lembrar de novo, vocês vão ninguém fumar, tá? Podemos experimentar.
Olha, como é que ele sobrevive? O mundo pop é muito turbulento, tem muita coisa acontecendo. Como é que ele explica que tem sobrevivido por 10 anos?
He's saying that the pop world is very turbulent. And how could you survive, so well in this past 10 years? Understand?
We take sickness pills. We take sickness pills.
Oh.
How do you survive? I think essentially that we've always believed that a great song is a great song, and that we've always tried to make music that came from the heart. And how does one survive? We think that we don't really belong to any particular clique or school. We're probably set apart from people in the sense we're quite individual, totally individualistic.
Ela disse que primeiro toma pílulas contra doença. E que sempre acreditou que as grandes canções serão sempre as grandes canções. E que a música que eles fazem vem do coração. E que, de uma certa forma, eles se mantêm mais ou menos afastados assim, dessa turbulência. E que eles se consideram assim, individualistas, nesse sentido. Essa é a receita da sobrevivência.
Para muita gente, o segundo álbum deles, Sweet Dreams, é o mais representativo. Eu queria saber se isso os incomoda e se eles acham que já superaram esse álbum.
I think that for many people, the second album, Sweet Dreams, is the most representative of the year. Do you think this, thing bothered you, this, because the previous songs refer to it, or do you think you went over it?
Well, I think that just probably is a landmark in pop history. Just I think every band has a landmark. Like I Can't Get No Satisfaction, the Stones had a landmark in that song. But I think we've made 8 albums so far, and they've all been completely unique in their own way. And in fact, Sweet Dreams is probably one of the less-selling albums compared to the other ones, But I don't know about South America, of course, because you never see the rollers make.
Ele diz que esse álbum representa realmente assim, um marco na história da música para eles. Assim como a Satisfaction dos Rolling Stones. Eles já fizeram 6 discos e que completamente distintos, únicos. E que realmente o Sweet Dreams é o que vendeu menos. Porque ele não sabe da verdade aqui na América do Sul, porque eles não conseguem receber prestação de contas, mas que realmente eles consideram um marco.
Eu li que shows dessa turnê desde 29 quem entra é uma colombiana vindo cantando músicas brasileiras das falsa baiana. Eu queria saber quando é que apareceu essa menina, o que eles abrem para música brasileira, se vai acontecer isso aqui.
She's asking about the Colombian singer that has been singing with you. She sings some Brazilian songs, and she opens for you. And this is going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And why did it happen? How did we find her?
Well, we have a bass player who played with us for the last four years, and he's also played with lots of people like Pretenders and B10, and he's a fantastic guy, and he's a great bass player, and I think...
He's called Chucho Marchand.
Yeah, he's called Chucho Marchand, he's from Colombia, and his girlfriend's Anna Maria, and the two of them together make a great team, so Anna's a dancer and a songwriter herself, and so we worked into the show that she opened the show. It's kind of a trick that opens the show that people don't realise what's going on and it turns into Eurithmics. But even before that, we used to have a tape we used to play, which I made in my bedroom in 1981 or something, a girl from the service spoke in Portuguese, and we used to mix it with all sorts of crazy sounds, and she used to say, in Portuguese, she used to say, and now, not from this world, from a different universe, coming from, you know, as if we were a spaceship landing from all over the world, and out of space. So we've always had this thing running throughout our shows.
Eles conheceram essa cantora há 4 anos atrás, através do baixista deles, que é Marchand. E que ele é um cara fantástico, já tocou com vários grupos, como os 30 e outros grupos, e que a Ana Maria era namorada dele. E que ele acha que isso é mais ou menos um truque para abrir o show, porque é uma coisa que faz com que você realmente não espere o que venha depois. Então, aquele ato que é uma coisa completamente diferente do que eles fazem, mas ao mesmo tempo você tem um público meio expectante para saber o que vem depois. E que mesmo antes deles usarem essa cantora, eles já usavam um tape que ele fez no próprio quarto com uma moça que fala português, amiga dele, falando assim coisas que eu vim de outro planeta, não sou desse universo, como se fosse realmente uma coisa assim do espaço, que preparava mais ou menos o público para a apresentação deles.
Eu queria saber então qual tem sido a aceitação dessa menina cantando em português pelo show da Europa.
Is she being accepted well, singing in Portuguese throughout Europe?
Well, it's different in different countries, but you'd have to see the beginning of our show to see what happens, because I don't want to give it away for people to see, but she's actually written a song especially for Saturday night's performance, which she wrote because she knew she was going to sing it here, so she'll be doing a slightly different thing this time. But yeah, some audiences go crazy, and other audiences are confused.
It's interesting, Grace, because for years we've been travelling around the world and singing our songs in English, obviously, because that's our language, to different countries. And it's an interesting phenomenon when you sing to a Japanese audience and they're mouthing back the lyrics of your songs, or you go to Germany or France, and all the languages are completely different, and yet they understand what we're singing about. And I feel that we've always felt that music is, it sounds cliche, but it's an international language. You communicate with people on a world basis. And for us, for Eurithmics, we've always been inspired by music from all different countries. People used to say to us, oh, what kind of group are you? And we said, we're eclectic. We love music. That's what it is. It can be inspiration from India. It doesn't matter. From centuries ago. From the future, you know.
Eles que eles têm viajado muito e geralmente cantando em inglês, sempre cantando em inglês, evidentemente que é a língua deles. E que eles acham muito interessante, por exemplo, no Japão, eles percebem que os japoneses estão participando, estão entendendo muitas vezes, estão cantando juntos na França, na Alemanha, e as pessoas mesmo não entendendo as palavras, eles entendem o que a música está passando. Elas que, apesar de ser um clichê, que ela gostaria de repetir que a música é realmente uma linguagem internacional. É a linguagem pela qual as pessoas podem se comunicar mais facilmente. E que eles sempre buscaram inspirações em músicas de outros países. Eles sempre gostaram de escutar músicas de outros países, como da Índia e de outros lugares. E também música para o futuro, música que ainda está para acontecer, que é uma coisa que também inspira eles.
Me parece que, ultimamente, eles se baseiam muito no soul, na soul music, no ritmo blues. Seria a vertente principal? Você admite nisso?
You say that right now you're very much inspired by soul music and rhythm and blues. Do you think this would be like the main source of your inspiration right now?
see, we don't really, two of us don't go around listening to soul music and rhythm and blues and then think, you know, oh, this is what we're making an album about. I think it's just that in our teenage years, there was lots of records that infiltrated up to the northeast of England. It's like the Beatles, when they were in Liverpool, they used to get records coming to the docks where the ships came, of blues music or whatever. Well, in the northeast of England, we used to get a lot of Tamla Motown and Stax R&B records. And that's what they used to play in the dance halls. So that's the only time that both of us really probably listen to that kind of music. But it's still there in your subconscious, so often when you're writing songs, you get that feeling.
I think also what Dave is saying is that it's not a study tool. It's something to do with instinct. And music is, when we're creating music, when we're writing, we're using part of our intellect, part of our instinct, part of our emotion. And it's something to do with almost like a collective place, a place that you respond to, you know. We respond to rhythm and melody and harmony and all those things. It's an extraordinary medium to work in creatively music.
Diz que realmente criar música, a música é uma mídia excepcional para a criação. E eles realmente não consideram que a influência principal seja o som e o rhythm and blues. Eles realmente cresceram, quando eram adolescentes, na parte nordeste da Inglaterra, onde os Beatles também vieram, e os blues era uma coisa muito presente, muito marcante nessa época. E principalmente nas salões de dança e tudo mais. Então essa coisa parece que ficou no subconsciente, tudo que eles ouviram na adolescência. Mas ela acha que não é uma coisa proposital, é uma coisa quase que instintiva, faz parte do intelecto, da emoção que eles conservaram dessa época que eles ouviam esse tipo de música. E que realmente como se fosse um lugar coletivo. A música que eles fazem sai de um lugar coletivo onde essas emoções todas estão registradas, estão guardadas. Eles respondem ao ritmo, eles respondem à melodia e acham que essa via de criação para eles é uma das mais importantes dentro das artes.
O Dave, ele tem um trabalho assim, muito extenso como produtor de outros artistas, né? Eu gostaria de saber dele quando esse trabalho dele começou, né? Quais foram os trabalhos com outros artistas mais assim, que satisfizeram ele, e principalmente sobre o trabalho que ele fez com um cantor e compositor soviético, né? Acho que foi no passado recentemente, né?
He wants to know about your part of your career as a producer, and specifically about the Soviet artists that you have produced recently.
Well, basically, in between, it all started at the beginning of Eurithmics when I learned how to operate a tape recorder. Because before that, Annie and I had been in a group called the Tourists, and we used to have our records made with a producer. And I could never understand why the records didn't sound like I imagined them in my head. So I learned how to operate a very simple, tape recorder, 2-track, then a 4-track, and an 8-track, just so that Annie and I could make records that we liked, which is how we made Sweet Dreams on an 8-track. And then it was a natural development from there. Lots of friends I would help them record, and then somebody would come and ask if I would help them make a record, and it just went from there. I've never actually been commissioned by a record company to produce somebody as such. It's more, I met somebody and we wrote a song and then it turned into making a record. And it was very similar with the Russian guy. Was actually in the garage across the street from me, in a friend's garage, and my friend rang me up and said, I've got a Russian in my garage, and he'd really like to meet you, because in Russia you used to have bootleg tapes of Eurithmics. And I went over there and I got on really well with him, and I realised that this was a chap that was the first time he'd been allowed out of the Soviet Union to make an album with an outside producer. So I went and made that regular. There's a documentary being made about it. I don't know if anybody's seen it here. But actually, I ended up going to Leningrad and playing live on stage with him as a band that played all together, which was the first time in Russia that Western and Russian people actually rehearsed together and made a. After that, was getting really interesting. Western people and Russian people actually play together on stage as opposed to separate.
What's the name of this?
It's called Boris Karenchi.
Realmente, entre as gravações, ele começou a se interessar por operar na mesa de gravação. E realmente isso começou esse interesse começou a se desenvolver no começo da carreira deles. Então ele foi aprendendo a primeiro operar com 2 canais, depois com 4 canais, passou para 8 canais, e daí foi para diante. Porque o disco produzido por outros produtores nunca soava como eles gostariam que soasse, como que eles tinham na imaginação. Então ele foi aprendendo e fazendo da maneira como eles gostavam. Que realmente isso foi desenvolvido através de amigos com quem eles trabalhavam. Que ele realmente, o trabalho dele foi acontecendo de uma maneira não programada. Ele nunca foi comissionado para produzir um disco. As coisas aconteceram naturalmente. E que o fato do cantor russo aconteceu porque ele tinha um amigo do outro lado da rua que um dia disse para ele: eu tenho um russo na minha garagem que canta e tudo mais, e que na União Soviética eles tinham esse conhecimento do Eurithmics, mas através de texto pirata. Então, realmente ele se encontrou com esse cara, curtiu o que ele estava fazendo e produziu. E realmente eles fizeram um concerto em Leningrado, que foi a primeira vez que o leste e o oeste se apresentaram juntos num concerto, tocando juntos e não em exibições separadas. E o nome do artista é Boris Karenchi.
Quando foi esse concerto?
When was that, the concert?
I think it was about a year ago.
Um ano atrás.
10 months ago or something like that.
Eu queria que eles dissessem alguma coisa sobre o The Tourist, o embrião, mais ou menos.
He would like to talk about the tourist that was like the embryo for the Eurithmics.
Well, in the tourist actually, because Annie and I didn't really write songs then. I played the guitar and took as many drugs as possible. And Annie sang, and we didn't really think of ourselves as songwriters. And another guy called Pete Coombs, he wrote a lot of the songs. But it was, I think, a confused period for us, where we were actually learning about, well, we learned a lot about performance and that kind of thing, but it was after the tourists broke up that we started to learn about songwriting.
Diz que realmente foi um período bem confuso para a vida deles. Que eles tomavam muitas drogas, tanto quanto possível, e que ele começou a tocar guitarra nessa época, mas um guitarrista chamado Pete Coombs, escrevia a maior parte das músicas. Que realmente foi um período confuso, em que eles estavam ainda aprendendo e que eles não sabiam muita coisa a respeito de apresentação em público, então começaram a desenvolver essa parte também, e que foi um período em que eles aprenderam não só a se apresentar bem em público, como também a criar, a escrever as próprias canções.
Qual tamanho qual político eles são? Quer dizer, a situação, por exemplo, leste europeu, eles foram para Moscou, e a situação da própria situação política da Inglaterra, se eles, por acaso, escrevem sobre isso, pensam escrever.
He wants to know how political you are because of the situation and what's happening in Europe right now and in England. What do you feel about that? Do you write about this, the political situation in the world?
Not directly. don't like political songs directly. Of course, we're no different to anybody else. We're very conscious of a lot of things that are happening in the world, extraordinary things that are going on. And personally, I speak for myself. I admire the writers very much who incorporate direct political statements in their songs. I think this is a real gift. And as a lyricist, I feel that's really not my gift. If I have a gift at all, it's on another level. It's the politics of human emotion, to touch people, to communicate with them. And I feel that politics is such a corrupt and filthy thing that I don't want to get too involved in it. You know, there's so much that personally I would like to say right now, but I'm not going to do it because it's too simplistic to start to talk about these incredibly serious problems. You know what I'm talking about, I know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to oversimplify it. I don't want to come here and talk about the rainforest, you know, but I hope that you'll write that down. You understand me?
Yes.
Realmente eles não fazem canções políticas, não diretamente. Porque eles realmente não são diferentes de nenhuma outra pessoa. Que eles têm consciência do que está acontecendo no mundo. E que ela pessoalmente admira quem incorpora essa parte política no seu trabalho. Que ela considera isso uma dádiva, um dom real. Que não é o dom real para ela. E se ela vê algum dom, alguma dádiva, que é a política das emoções humanas, que para ela a política, do modo como é feita atualmente, é uma coisa suja, não é uma coisa, sabe, que agrada a ela, realmente. E que seria muito simples, muito, sabe, só chegar e falar a respeito dos problemas sérios que existem no mundo. Que ela realmente não quer chegar aqui e falar, só por falar a respeito, por exemplo, da floresta amazônica, que ela realmente admira quem faça isso, mas que não é a coisa para eles.
I just want to say an extra thing on that. That all musicians have discovered that we can be a mouthpiece for a great deal of things. Every day in our office, we receive 20 letters, let's say, from different charities, from many different causes, you know, because people want us to make their causes known or to give money or any kind of support we can. And we try to do what we can, you know. We're always trying to give something or talk about something. But there is a danger for us, for everybody, and that is for you too, for the media too, is that you can really abuse this thing, because it's very, very serious. And we can be abused also. You see big corporations, like Coca-Cola, like Hollywood Presents, you know. You know, can you imagine how I feel about that? We want to come here and sing in Brazil, so we have an opportunity to do so. I don't want to stand there with Hollywood Presents behind me, you know. I want to tell everybody to stop smoking cigarettes, so.
Que os músicos, de modo geral, podem ser os portadores, os porta-vozes para diferentes causas. Que realmente as pessoas gostam de ver os artistas envolvidos nessas causas, e muitos artistas gostam de realmente amparar e suportar e promover coisas que ajudem a essas causas. Que eles tentam fazer o que eles podem. Eles colaboram com dinheiro, ou, de uma certa forma, com as performances deles, mas que isso é uma coisa meio perigosa, tanto da parte do artista quanto da parte da mídia. Que pode ser uma coisa meio abusiva, que o problema é mais sério do que ele realmente se apresenta. Porque as grandes corporações que estão por trás dessas coisas todas, como por exemplo a Coca-Cola e a Hollywood, eles dão dinheiro e ajudam essas causas Mas ao mesmo tempo eles continuam destruindo as florestas e vendendo cigarros, e que ela não gostaria de ver o nome deles envolvido, como Hollywood suporta a causa dos Eurithmics, que ela gostaria de ver eles dizendo: não fumem, parem de fumar.
Regina, eu queria saber aqui, a gente tem ouvido o tempo todo os sintetizadores caírem em desgraça total nas entrevistas. Está todo mundo voltando nesse disco, sabe? Eu queria saber para onde eles acham que está indo pop rock, com tanto revival que está rolando.
We have been hearing the press conferences from other artists about synthesizers and those gadgets that they are trying to turn away from that thing and going back to the more acoustic sound. And how do you see where do you think the pop rock is going now with this kind of change?
Well, I think every decade there's been, towards the end of the decade, there's been a new wave of something for the last 4 decades or whatever. And I think the last 6 years of 1980s, I think just got completely overtaken with all this dance music that actually says absolutely nothing, And I think from the beginning of 1990 onwards, I hope anyway, that will be the rise again of groups who actually have something to say. Because especially in America, with groups like the New Kids on the Block, which are probably massive here in South America too, another sort of 40 million albums in America. It's kind of depressing, really, when you think that it's 1976 and we had groups like the Clash and the Sex Pistols, these kind of bands that to see the New Kids on the Block wearing ripped jeans and pretending they're hanging tough, to me, I think it has to be a complete move away from that kind of thing and back to real music.
I think what was an interesting phenomenon for us was that we discovered about 10 years ago that corporations started to get very interested in the youth market, and they wanted to use it to their benefit. So what happens is that you have artists really shaking hands, in a sense, symbolically, with money makers and at a very big scale. So when you first watched the video phenomenon, it was something really interesting, and it was breaking some barriers, and it was a new way to present groups. Then, very subtly and gradually, you started to see that it was looking like some kind of advertisement, and you couldn't tell if it was an advert for Nike shoes, or Levi jeans, or Coca-Cola, or if it really was a group, And this is something that is a very dirty kind of business, in a way. We used to feel that musicians sort of had their own individual levels and standards, and that they didn't belong to anybody else, and nobody had them in their back pocket. And nobody has Eurithmics we're not in somebody's back pocket, because we never did any of those deals. And this is the frightening thing, I think, for us, is that it starts to be very money all the time. And I don't know where it's going. I have faith that somebody will break that, something will break this chain, this big money chain.
Diz que realmente, a partir das últimas décadas, as coisas têm realmente mudado, têm se transformado. E os últimos 6 anos da década de 80 foi realmente tomada de assalto pela música de dança, que é uma música que não quer dizer absolutamente nada, que não tem nenhuma mensagem, e que espera que a década de 90 possa trazer novos grupos que tenham alguma coisa para dizer. Para ele é uma coisa assim muito que que deixa ele muito deprimido, ele vê grupos como New Kids on the Block venderem 4 milhões de álbuns na América, mas tentando imitar um estilo que já é uma coisa completamente superada, como o Clash of Sex Pistols, que realmente...
Eles fazem coisas como em 76,
Exatamente.
o Clash e
E Sex Pistols. Que eles tentam imitar de uma forma que não é a maneira como eles faziam. E que realmente, para ela, é um fenômeno. Ela vê como as grandes corporações usam os artistas, que é muito desagradável para ela ver, observar os artistas apertando as mãos com as grandes corporações só por causa de dinheiro. Que o fenômeno do vídeo se tornou uma coisa assim, tão comercial que realmente para ela é muito desagradável ver os artistas sendo fazendo comerciais para Nike ou para Levi's ou para Coca-Cola, e que ela acha que isso é um tipo de negócio meio sujo, que os músicos devem lutar pelos seus próprios níveis de standards, para o que eles acreditam, e que ela quer ver ainda alguém quebrar essa cadeia de dinheiro, ela quer ver isso acontecer, que no momento é o prevalente.
Não deve ter faltado convites para uma carreira solo da Ani, a indústria do disco, que pensa muito nesses termos. Queria saber se ela já pensou num disco solo, se atrai a ideia.
E se eles chegaram a pensar em separamento como recentemente?
Because of your singing, very promising singer, if you have thought about a solo career, if you had invitations to do an album solo, if you could,
É que antes desse Pitch Lavone, chegou a rolar uma boataria de que eles estavam separando
and it is true
profissional.
that you're thinking about going separate ways professionally.
Well, we just signed a new record deal, and we're still very much a unit. But we've been making music together for 14 years. And Dave is actually at the moment writing his own solo album, which he will tell you about. I won't. And I would maybe like to try, to just as an exercise, to see what it would be like to write songs without him. It might be very difficult because I'm so accustomed to working with him, That's a possibility, but we're not splitting up. We're staying together, but we're doing things separately in the same way that I suppose Phil Collins did with Genesis and, other artists do it, but it doesn't mean that the group is split up,
Well, I think also because, we're male and female, sometimes I want to say something that's got a different point of view. And so, for the next 2 years, it'd be interesting for me just to make an album. Well, it's the first time in my life, actually, making an album myself where I'm saying things that I want to say from my point of view. And I'm sure Annie sometimes wants to sing things particularly from her point of view. But it's just a break as well, because we've made 8 albums in 10 years, which is a hell of a lot. I mean, I think some bands take 3 or 4 years per album, and we've made so many that it'd be good to just have a little break. I was wanting to say something else about, this thing about the way music's going. See, I think running parallel to the pop business, running alongside it, there's always been fantastic musicians. And for instance, Dylan, who played here last night, has just brought out an album, Oh Mercy, which I think is a great album. And it's nothing to do with pop or fashion. And Paul Simon brought out an album, Gracelands, which I thought was a brilliant album. There was nothing to do with pop or fashion. And there's always people running parallel, like, John Lee Hooker or Dr. Johns or the Robert Cranes. Or there's always this other music, and it's just that people get bombarded with the pop charts, with pop videos. And I was so sick of this that I just made a TV series myself with a 6-part series showing artists that aren't particularly part of this pop thing. Singers like K.D. Lang and the Neville Brothers. People who have gone ahead and just made their own kind of music. And I think that there is this other world of music that often gets lost because they aren't doing deals with Coca-Cola and they aren't making stupid kind of pop videos with banal storylines, and they're just making music that is fantastic. And I really think that that kind of music lasts forever, and you can be 70 years old, like a John Lee Hooker, and make a great record. You know?
Vocês estão trabalhando juntos há 14 anos. Que o Dave está realmente trabalhando no seu próprio disco, mas só ela deixaria por conta dele para dar maiores detalhes. Que ela gostaria realmente de tentar fazer um álbum solo como um exercício dentro da carreira. Que é uma coisa difícil para ela, porque ela está tão acostumada a trabalhar com ele, que eles realmente não pensam em se separar, mas pensam em fazer coisas separadas. E que o David disse que ele, já sendo homem e mulher, já tem diferentes pontos de vista. Que ele pretende nos próximos anos apresentar vários trabalhos próprios que contenham o seu ponto de vista próprio. Que o trabalho que eles vêm desenvolvendo, para ele considera uma coisa assim, muito importante, de muito peso, porque em 10 anos eles lançaram 8 discos, e que é bastante em termos de comparando com outros artistas que levam muito mais tempo para gravar. E que ele acha que uma coisa se correndo paralela.
O mais difícil para ele, o que é mais difícil manter? O casamento ou o conjunto?
He's saying, what's more difficult to maintain? You know, being together as a couple or being together as a performer, as performers?
It's obviously more difficult to maintain being a couple because we're not a couple this week. So that was obviously more difficult.
Diz que é mais difícil se manter como um casal porque eles não são um casal.
E o repertório do show, hein? O que eles vão tocar?
About the show, what are you going to play?
Not to tie you, not to tie. It's like asking you to open a Christmas present, you know, before Christmas Day.
Eles querem vamos abrir o presente de Natal antes do Natal, que vai ser uma surpresa. What do you think about playing before Terence?
I think Terry's more. I don't think it really makes any difference. I mean, when the audience are watching us, and when they're watching him, they're watching him. I wouldn't like to be him, but I don't think it makes a lot of difference.
Ele disse que acho que não faz a menor diferença, mas quem não gostaria de ser o Terence?
Where you want to go?
To the right,
please. That's right.
Listen, baby, I just want to say
Chega todo mundo pra cá, vem pra cá você também ali, ó. Ali. Organiza ali.
À frente,
Fotógrafos discutindo, eles brigam uma boa foto. Então isso vai ser bem tranquilo, acostumado a esse mundo da fama.
tiro de movimento, mas parado não dá.
Você fotografia, né?
Normal, galera.
Deu?
Todos os jornais já estão pensando que a gente viaja.
Ok, já deu? Vamos lá? Um pouquinho pra cá, um pouquinho pra cá. Peraí, quanto pouquinho? Isso.
Quase. Olha aí.
Okay, thumbs up. Okay, Terry? I'm on. Thank you.
The way things are always done. So it does present a problem, and a greater challenge perhaps for the industry can handle right now, when someone seeks to just basically do things out of the normal in which they've done in the recording industry.
Ele disse que isso é como mal entendido, que ele não quis que houvesse um arquivo lançado antes do lançamento político, mas sim depois. E que ele acha que o tempo não ajudou. Quando foi lançado, o tempo não contribuiu para que houvesse o sucesso. E também ele acha que a indústria do disco não está equipada para lidar com artistas que querem fazer alguma coisa diferente. E é sempre um desafio para a indústria lidar com gente que quer fazer a sua própria coisa e não seguir a linha de conduta estabelecida pela indústria.
Eu queria saber, entre Prince e Michael Jackson, onde ele se situa?
He wants to know in between Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson.
Prince.
Oh, I'm sorry, Prince. I understand. I understood Quincy. And in between Prince and Michael Jackson, where do you situate yourself?
I don't.
Ele não se situa.
Olá. Gostaria de saber dele se ele sente alguma tensão em fechar o evento aqui em São Paulo.
Se ele sente o quê?
Alguma tensão ou uma expectativa?
He wants to know if you feel like kind of tense of having the deal with closing the festival. Do you feel any expectation about that?
I think sometimes the best way to handle these things are to remain ignorant. I think a lot of times the reason I'm not more afraid than I'm probably stupid is because I'm too stupid to be afraid. So I think it's the best thing that can happen.
Ele disse que a melhor maneira de você lidar com isso é você se conservar ignorante dos fatos, não prestar atenção aos fatos. E que ele não tem medo de encarar isso. E que a melhor maneira de você, e que ele acha que talvez ele seja um pouco idiota por não ter medo, mas quer comunicar as coisas.
Queria saber qual é a diferença entre o som que ele fazia no According a Hardline with Terence, Trent e o novo disco que ele lançou agora no Brasil. Qual e por que a diferença do som?
He wants to know the difference in between the According to the Hardline and this new record, and why you changed. What is the difference between the two records?
Difference is one sold a lot of records and the other flopped.
A diferença é que um vendeu muito e que o outro falhou. Essa é a diferença.
Eu gostaria de assistir, também se ele conhece Michael Jackson, se ele conhece Prince.
O que ele gosta mais?
O que ele acha deles e se ele admite que algum deles, ou os dois, o tenha influenciado.
He wants to know if you know Michael Jackson and Prince, and if you admit that any of one of them have been an influence to you.
I don't think I'm not afraid to admit that they both have had some influence on me, especially Michael Jackson when I was very, very young, and Prince has some inspirational as regards some person who has boldness and vision. So I have a lot of respect for both of them. I think for me at the moment, one is more of an artist. I think that Prince is a person driven purely for the sake of trying to leave as much a mark on music as possible. I think Prince is trying to leave as big a mark on music as possible, whereas with Jackson, I see Jackson as the most phenomenally talented businessman in the recording industry. So I think one is driven more by art and the other is driven right now a bit more by money. But I still respect both of them because they're very, very talented I think in their own way, the both of them were geniuses. One as a performer and the other as a complete artist.
Ele foi influenciado por ambos, e principalmente quando ele era muito jovem pelo Michael Jackson. E que o Prince é uma inspiração para ele pela maneira agressiva e pela visão que ele tem das coisas. Que ele tem muito respeito por ambos. Ele acha que o Prince quer, principalmente, é deixar uma marca, a marca dele na música. Que ele está mais preocupado com o aspecto artístico da música dele, enquanto que o Michael Jackson assim, é um fenômeno para negócios, que ele está mais interessado em fazer dinheiro. E que, de qualquer maneira, ele respeita os dois igualmente, que acha os dois, ambos, gênios. Um para fazer dinheiro e o outro para deixar sua marca na arte.
Ele começou a carreira dele, apesar de americano, ele trabalha na Inglaterra. Gostaria que fizesse uma comparação, um paralelo entre os dois mercados e se ele se interessa em trabalhar também nos Estados Unidos. Trabalhar, gravar, assim, produzir.
Despite you being in America, you work more in England, and you would like to have a comparison between the two markets, and if you have any intention of work more in the States.
I not only work in England, I live in England. I haven't lived in America now for 10 years. I've lived in Europe for 5 years, and before I lived in London, which I've now lived for 5 years. The difference is that when the first album first came out, there was a big difference, unfortunately, fortunately, than there is now. The difference being that England was still a place where it was just a bit more open musically. America is an extremely conservative market. Everything is very easily categorized and labeled. I think my biggest problem at this particular point in time, as it also was in the hardline, the hardline happened in America almost like flu, to be honest. Is that in America, as in a lot of other places, I think they expect black artists to do one particular thing. And if you're a black artist and you're influenced by a lot of rock music as well as by what some people call soul music, it presents a marketing problem. The radio stations there also are very fragmented. There is basically black radio and white radio, and very little in between. So it's very difficult. I'm going through a period of time right now where non-official flesh was even more difficult for the record company to market. So that's just the main problem. In America, it's a lot more conservative and less open-minded than it is in Europe or, let's say, England.
The creation process for your new LP?
It's not a whole lot of mystery behind it. When I write songs, I don't sort of pick up a guitar or go to the piano. They just sort of come to me out of wherever they come from. And basically, neither fish nor flesh. And also to answer your question a bit, the reason it's so different from the hardline is because the hardline was the hardline, and that's what I had to say as a young man at 24, 25. And then another 2 years passed, and a lot of things happened to me. And then Neither Fish Nor Flesh is basically a portrait of what was going on, you know, where I was at, where my head was. And actually it's pointing me towards where I'm going. I sort of can't take a step back from it now because it's propelled me into a direction which I'm very excited about. I'm slightly disillusioned, or I felt slightly disillusioned because I'm too much of an idealist. I think I'm in the wrong time sometimes because I have a lot of idealism. And I think sometimes I actually believe that the album would be more embraced by people who were the same people who said that music wasn't adventurous as it used to be. It was really boring and conservative, and people didn't take as many chances. So I actually thought that it would be embraced, but for some peculiar reason, it wasn't. You know, so it sort of brought about a period of disillusionment where I just thought, you know, why? You know, but you can't really sort these things out too much. The advantage that I have, the fortunate thing that I have, is that I'm able to talk to people, to artists who've been around for many years, and they can relate to me things that are similar experiences that make me feel like, well, I guess that's what artists go through. You know, and it's made me galvanize in my own mind the difference between what it means to be a pop star and what it means to be an artist. And I would imagine that pop stars come and go, you know, but if you want to be an artist, you have to look on a long term. You have to just do what you do. There's no real calculation. There was no real calculation behind Artificial Flesh. It's what I had to say at that particular time. And I'm very, very proud of it. Where we go from here, I don't really know. It's still a lot of time, you know, for it to do something or to do nothing still, you know, but I'm not sure what happens next. I think maybe I'll do some films or something. Maybe I'll wash the windows if you pick me.
Ele pintou como um artista esquivo, não falava. Hoje ele está dando uma produtiva. Como funciona esse processo para ele? O que mudou? Eu nunca vi entrevista.
Teve uma carona na pergunta dele, eu queria saber como é que ele se define, se é uma pessoa mais arrogante ou ele é tímido mesmo?
E também saber se ele é tão tímido no palco quanto nas entrevistas.
The first question was that the image that you pass is that in the beginning you were kind of shy of interviews, didn't want to talk too much, and that changed a little bit. And how do you define yourself if you're arrogant or if you're shy, and if you on stage if you are as shy as you are as a normal person outside stage?
When I first came out, I was really trying to be entertaining and provocative, and just when people read about me, they would go away entertained or amused or provoked to some degree, because all the people that I grew up idolizing were provocative, and I tried to place myself in that tradition. You know, a lot of people say that I'm arrogant. Most of those people don't really know me that well. It's very easy to look at someone, walk past you, and then try to grab some type of quick analysis of that person. But I don't think the whole point of the title "Artificial Flesh" was that because of the dominant role that the media is starting to play in our lives, we try to condense everything into one or two very catchy phrases and words. And people aren't like that. People are very complex. And I'm a complex person. Most people I know are complex people. So one minute they might be very arrogant, the next minute they might be extremely shy and humble, the next minute you might really love them, the next moment you might not like them so much. But I'm probably like that, just like a lot of people I know. The world is too complex. There are too many things that keep happening every day for people to always remain the same. And I'm an artist, and artists are emotional, sensitive people. And if you've said something or done something that I can appreciate or I like you in any way, I'm the type of person to let you know that. But also, if people annoy me, I also reserve the right to tell them to fuck off. And you know, this is anyone's right.
Tem mais alguma coisa nessa pergunta que eu deixei de passar a ele? Ou não? The States for about 10 years, so you didn't do any military service, you didn't register for
Yes,
military.
I was in military service, but they sent me to Europe in about 1981. So actually it's been 9 years, I'm sorry. and that's the last time I was there. And now very soon I shall be a resident of England or France or Ireland or someplace. I'm trying to work out now where actually we're starting to call home. It's starting to become a bit important for me because I'm sort of tired of going from one place to another and not feeling like I really belong to one. So excuse that factual error. I didn't mean to misspeak.
It's good. Mama brother wanted to know you, to meet you. And why, he wanted to meet you, if this encounter happened or not.
I never met him personally. I only heard through someone who was working with me that someone who was working for him called and said he'd like to meet. He was thinking about doing a film that he thought I might be good for. I think the whole bluster that was happening in the time of the press, me being called arrogant and all this, I think he identified with that because I think he was accused of all the same things when he was young, so I think maybe he felt some sympathy or something and recognized maybe some of his old self, and I can't speculate that much about it. But he is one of my idols. I would love to meet him. He is one of the few people who's both a great actor and a great movie star. So.
He wants to know about the band, because you have someone in your band, a percussionist, that has a Portuguese name.
Yeah.
Is it Portuguese?
I think so, yes. Yes.
From Portugal.
Yeah, he does definitely speak the language, so I'm looking forward to him keeping me out of a lot of trouble.
Ele diz que ele é de Portugal, acha que ele é, não estou entendendo, eu acho que ele é de Portugal, mas ele fala a língua. E que ele acha que isso vai ajudar muito a ele a tirar ele dos problemas, hein?
Falar pouco sobre essa banda, há quanto tempo?
And he wants you to talk about the band and how long you've been together. And
I've been with most of them for about 3 years. I've been with a couple of them about 4 years already. So most of the band, except for 3 new members, have been with me for a few tours already. I feel that I got the right people I was looking for. In England, England doesn't have the same level of musicians as America. When I say that, I mean that there are everywhere. There's a tremendous amount of musicians in America who can play really, really well. That doesn't exist so much in England because it's smaller. And because when punk came along, it made a divide between younger musicians who learned that the musicality of what they did wasn't as important as the attitude, and then older guys who could play really, really well, but they looked a bit too old to be in a rock and roll band. So I was able to find guys who were both competent enough to really be considered good musicians, and yet had the energy and the vitality of being in a rock and roll band.
Presents here in Scotland.
I have no idea what my music represents here, and I think sometimes it's best that I really don't know, because I don't want to walk on a stage like taking it for granted that these people will like me. I just think that I tend to perform best when I'm under a bit of pressure. Mind you, I'm always under a bit of pressure, so that's the only way I know really. But it's in a lot of ways, playing to a big crowd of that nature is much easier than playing to a crowd of 1,000 people, because unfortunately it's easy to, the more people there are, the easier it is to bullshit them with just big gestures and big noises. And the task that I want to learn is how to take that many people and make it as intimate as we possibly can, to make them feel like they're in a club. That would be the ideal situation. That lesson has been learned by people like, like Bruce Springsteen and various people who are able to play to large numbers of audiences and still make them feel like they're part of a small community. And that's what I like to do. And I prefer to remain quite ignorant of what I might mean or not mean.
Are you going to dance?
How much money one can make out of rock and roll music. Until I realize that whether I take the money that is owed me or not, there is some, the corporate structure makes far more than I can ever make from it. And that when my time is finished, no one will feel sorry for me in those companies. they will continue to exploit talent and make as much as possible. So I started feeling guilty because I felt, well, whilst it is unfair that I make more for working hard than you make for working hard, still that's nothing I can do about that, and that's the way it is, and I will take from me what is mine that I've earned. But you know, the recording industry has not been known so far for giving anything back. They take and take and take, and you know, a lot of those, like I said, those early performers have nothing. And what we're trying to do is to get those record companies, with all the money they make from me and Ross and New Kids on the Block and all that type of stuff, to basically give some money back to those people that they owe and have never paid them royalties or anything. You know, so that's really the reason for the foundation, and also to recognize the contribution those people have made to America's only real contribution to world culture. It was their music and McDonald's. Hello friends, 99 FM, Philadelphia City. It's Terence and our number one single.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
Bye.
Bye-bye.